Would you love to create some exciting backgrounds with your Posca paint pens, or simply try out a new technique? Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Nairi and my aim is to help you improve your art skills so you can create painted rocks that you're proud of. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I do a technique that Posca calls blowing. It's super easy to do and creates a spray paint-like effect that looks amazing. And I've got a few tips and tricks I'll share with you as we go along so you get the best results. If you are new to my channel and like this video, please click subscribe below as it would really help me out a lot. So let's get straight into it. First off, let's talk about the materials you will need. So you'll need something to paint on. In my case it's a rock, but you can use Posca paint pens on a wide range of surfaces, so select whatever support you like. You'll obviously need some Posca paint pens, a straw, which I cut in half. Now this is optional, but I find it super useful, particularly if you're using PC3M pens. I also use art masking fluid. This is optional as well, but very handy if you want to retain the sketch on your rock, as spraying will cover some of your pencil markings. And a rubber cement pickup. Again optional, but very handy for removing the masking fluid. I'll put details in the description below of the exact products I'm using. To do the blowing technique, you can literally just blow vigorously on the tip of a Posca paint pen and it will spray onto the surface. If you blow really vigorously, or you have a lot of paint on your nib, you might create some big splatters rather than a spray-like effect. So I'd recommend having a play around on a piece of scrap paper with the amount of paint flow on the nib and the strength with which you need to blow before moving onto your rock. Whilst I was experimenting with this technique, I tried using a straw to blow through and found that I really liked it, as it better controls the direction and the volume of paint. Plus I found it enabled me to use this technique with PC3M pens. Posca advised that this technique works best with broad tip pens like the PC5M, 7M, 8K or 17K, but for rock painting, because rocks are so small, I use small tips, usually PC3M, but sometimes PC5M. Definitely nothing bigger than this. It is easier to do this technique with PC5M sized pens as you've got more paint flow, but I could easily do it with PC3M pens using the straw. A couple of tips though when you are doing this with PC3M sized pens. 1. Give your pen a good shake with the lid on and pump the nib to ensure it is filled with paint. 2. Blow through a straw to get high air pressure as it condenses all of your breath into a narrow area. And 3. Do 1 or 2 blows through the straw and then pump the nib again to ensure you keep refilling the nib with paint before blowing through the straw again. Another thing I experimented with was using art masking fluid, and this is gold. If you apply it over the foreground of your image, it protects it from being covered in paint when you blow. This makes it super easy to preserve all of the detail of your drawing, as once you've done your spray painting, you can remove the masking fluid with a rubber cement pickup and your pencil sketch will still be on the rock. There are loads of brands of art masking fluid on the market, but if you can get one in a pen applicator, it makes applying it super quick and easy, and there's no cleanup. I apply the masking fluid over my white acrylic base coat because I like using base coats, but I also tried applying it directly onto a rock without a base coat and it worked just as well. It is slightly harder to remove when it has paint over it, so you're better off trying to avoid purposefully painting over it and just use it for accidental spills or spray, or be willing to take a little longer removing it. Also, the masking fluid I used in this video says to remove it within 2 days from the surface. I tried applying the masking fluid and removing it within an hour and it came off super easy. I also applied the masking fluid and left it on for 2 full days, and although it came off, it was definitely more difficult to remove. So my advice is to apply it, and once it's dry, paint immediately and then remove the masking fluid as soon as your paint is dry. Rubber cement pickups are amazing for doing this, and I'd highly recommend getting one. If you don't have masking fluid and don't want to use it, you can use the blowing effect on your entire rock and then draw or transfer your image onto the rock afterwards. Posca paint pens are really opaque, so you won't have any issue painting over a spray painted background. My final tip on masking fluid is don't use a hairdryer to dry it or to dry the paint on top of it. I'm not sure why, but I've found that using a hairdryer on it makes it significantly more difficult to remove. So let's talk about how I get these colour gradients. You can literally use this blowing technique with any colours you like, but I find it tends to look best if you stick with one colour and use a range of different tones or values of that colour, or you use colours that are adjacent or next to each other on the colour wheel, as these form a related harmonious sequence. When you are creating a colour gradient, I like to use at least 3 different pens within a colour, sometimes up to 5, plus black and white. I'll list the colours I used in each of these 3 sprayed backgrounds in the description below. Black and white are great for increasing the range of tonal values, so I've got lighter lights and darker darks, which makes the spray effect look more dramatic and have a greater visual impact. So how I approach blowing is first I draw on a base colour. This colour is usually a mid-tone of the selection of colours I'm using. I just put one coat over the whole base. Then I decide where I want the lightest, brightest areas to be and the darkest areas to be. Then I tend to blow on the colour I painted for the base coat first, followed by the next tone lighter and the next one lighter again if you have another. And then I do the same for the darker tones, starting with the closest but slightly darker tone and then the next darkest, etc. And I just keep going, repeating these steps until I have a look that I'm happy with. I generally like to add the black and white at the very end, but the order doesn't really matter. I find the rock tends to look best just by doing multiple coats of each colour so that layers of speckles are built up. And that's it. I really hope you found this blowing technique interesting and it helps you to create some exciting new effects with your Posca pens. And if you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, please click like and the subscribe button below.